Hey there everyone, this is Jessica from DomesticatedMe.com here with a very exciting video. If y'all remember, a while ago I did a 23andMe video. I did the whole package, the ancestry and the health, and I opened it up with you guys, and it was all very super interesting, super exciting for me. I'm someone who has always been I've always been someone who's sought out stories, and especially stories about my family and where we come from and how my family, how my parents grew up. And I have been raised by my Colombian side, by my Colombian family, and so I know a lot about their history and their stories. And unfortunately, I don't know so much about my father's side. So I do know that my father is he's from Ecuador. My family has been in Cuenca probably for centuries. My grandmother has owned her farm for many years. It's the family farm. I know that they've been there for quite a long time, but that's about it. Other than personal stories about how they grew up and things that happened to them, that's about all I know. So getting a little deeper insight into my total DNA history, but especially his, was very special for me. If you are new here, hey there, my name is Jessica Flores and I'm a lifestyle content creator. I cover everything from fashion to beauty, luxury, family travel, DIY projects, and so much more. So if any of those topics interest you, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the little bell icon next to the subscribe button so you can set up your notifications for all. I make new videos every week, and that way you will be notified whenever my videos come out and you won't miss a thing. So today I'm here to share that I actually had my father do his very own 23andMe, and I have the results with me. Unfortunately, he can't be here for me to reveal the results because we're traveling, but I'm just really excited to dig in. So for him, I really didn't need to know the health portion of it, so we just did just the Ancestry. This was the $99 package, and I think actually the price may have gone up already if it hasn't. I mean, regardless, I will link to 23andMe below, and if you're interested in trying it out, I highly recommend it. I had an incredible experience. You're going to see my second experience with it now, but I really do recommend it. I think it's really cool. I think it's really interesting to know about your history, not just your immediate history, but centuries past, where your family has traveled and been, and I find it fascinating. But okay, so here we go. Let's view the Ancestry composition results for my father. It says, Jaime, that's my father's name, your DNA suggests that 76.5% of your ancestry is Indigenous American. Since time immemorial, humans have called the Americas home, from the wind-batted islands of the southern Patagonia to the gently rolling tundra of the North American Arctic. Humans have lived in North America alongside now extinct mammoths and giant sloths as early as 23,000 years ago, if not before. But DNA evidence suggests that major migration into the Americas from Northeast Asia began around 16,000 years ago, and it was these later migrations that gave rise to most present-day Indigenous American ancestry. Despite drastic population losses over the past 500 years resulting from colonialism, the genetic legacy of the first peoples of the Americas persists to this day. The genetic landscape of the Americas was dramatically altered over the past 500 years following waves of immigration from Europe, Africa, and Asia. Millions of Indigenous Americans perished as a result of exposure to disease and genocide at the hands of European colonizers. But the genetic legacies of these early Americans persist to this day. Extensive mixing of historical populations called admixture resulted in new admixed genetic and cultural identities that define the people of the Americas today. Researchers estimate that fewer than half, possibly fewer than a third, of roughly 2,000 languages spoken in the Americas at the time of European contact are still spoken today. Many of the surviving languages are spoken by only a handful of people, although indigenous peoples across the Americas are mobilizing to preserve their linguistic heritage. Some indigenous languages and language families still have over 1 million native speakers, including Mayan and Nahuatl, which derives from Aztec in Central America, as well as Guarani, Aymara, and Quechua in South America. I'm someone who has always wanted to learn many languages. In fact, when I was a guest on the Bechdel Test podcast, where we talked about Disney's Encanto, at the end, we were asked what would our superpower be. We were part of the Madrigal family and we could have any superpower. My answer was that I wish that I could speak every language spoken ever. I just am fascinated by languages. I've always wanted to learn. I know English, obviously. Spanish was actually my first language, was Spanish. I know Italian I can understand Portuguese, I don't speak it, and I'm currently learning Quechua Cuencano, which has been a goal of mine for years now, a way to connect to my family, to my indigenous roots. It's something that I've always wanted to do, and I'm so happy that I finally started that journey, and I can share more about that later. All right, let's go back to the Ancestry. Unfortunately, it doesn't further break down my father's indigenous American roots. It doesn't give me specific areas or tribes or anything like that, so I can only go by what I know based off what my family's told me, what I know about the history of my family and where they're from. So based off that, I know that we are Quechua of the Cañari people, which is the tribe in the Cuenca area that's been there since pre-colonialism. So unfortunately, I am not getting more information. But now let's see what the other percentages are. So it says 21.3% European, and of that, 20.5% is Southern European, which breaks down into 15.4% Spanish and Portuguese, which makes sense because of colonization. 0.8% Italian, and then 4.3% broadly Southern European, and then 0.8% broadly European. Then we have trace ancestry, which is 0.9%, and that breaks down into 0.3% Siberian, 0.2% Nigerian, 0.2% Japanese, 0.1% Bengali and Northeast Indian. That's interesting. And then 0.1% broadly Western Asian and North African. And then there is a 1.3% that has been unassigned. Additional ancestry regions. Now we're seeing the breakdown of areas. So it says from the South American, Azuay, Ecuador. That makes sense. Cuenca is in the Azuay region of Ecuador. Then I'm seeing Callao region of Peru. And then there are 24 other regions. So in the country matches, obviously Ecuador, highly likely match, obviously. Peru, highly likely match. And then Bolivia is a possible match. Very interesting. And then the second part of that, it says Mexico and Central America. And the region that it's giving me is Jalisco, Mexico, plus 9 regions. So highly likely match is in Mexico. Now, I saw Mexico in my personal ancestry report when I opened the 23andMe, and I was utterly confused by it because I don't know anyone in my family that is from Mexico or that I have family in Mexico at all. So I found it, again, just confusing because I know that my family, to my knowledge, is South American. They are in Colombia and they're in Ecuador. But then I see that I have DNA matches with people in Mexico. And so I didn't understand that. Now, as I mentioned, I have been taking Quechua lessons, and I'm learning from someone who teaches Quechua in Ecuador. He's teaching me Quechua Cuencano, which is from my region. And what's wonderful about these classes is not only is he teaching me how to speak, but he's giving me some cultural background, he's giving me some historical context. And one of the things that he told me was that the Quechua people traded with tribes all over, not just all over Ecuador, not just the Andean region, but they traded with tribes all the way up in Mexico. So if you look back into history to pre-colonial times, these indigenous tribes would trade with Mexican tribes, and so therefore they would travel back and forth, and then that's where you would see the formations of families and mixing. And so now that makes sense to me. Now I understand why I have DNA relatives in Mexico. Isn't that absolutely fascinating? I just love it. Okay, now from the summary, I'm moving on to scientific details. So it says, although we've detected indigenous American DNA in your ancestral breakdown, we have not identified more specific locations that your recent ancestors may have called home. And I think that just means more people need to test. More people need to test. The more data they gather, the more they can identify where groups are from what tribes, what regions, and so if you are someone like me who's interested in your DNA background, and you do your research and you're comfortable with what you're sharing with this company, then the more of us do it, the more information we will get. And they do update things periodically. I still get emails saying, we have more DNA relatives that you match with. We have more research, more results, more reports to share. So again, the more information they gather, it's not like you pay for this is your report, bye-bye. the more information they gather, the more data they gather, then they continue to build on that and send you more reports and more information about your DNA ancestry. So now I'm going to go back to the Ancestry timeline and view that report. And how many generations ago was your most recent ancestor from each population? So for Indigenous American, I'm seeing 1 to 3. From Spanish and Portuguese, I'm seeing 5 to 8. Italian from 5 to 8. So this is very succinct, unlike mine, because I have my mother's DNA reflected in my report. I see a lot more information there. For my father, very simple. He's mostly Indigenous American, and then with some Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian ancestry.
I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge this message from 23andMe about how they're being responsible and respectful of the DNA that they receive from Indigenous peoples. Pause to read, but here at the bottom it says that with this history in mind, 23andMe strives to respect the cultural, religious, and national autonomy of Indigenous peoples around the world as we work to provide you with the information about your unique ancestries.
Well, there you go. This was interesting. I find this fascinating. Unfortunately, I wish I'd gotten more information about my father's Indigenous roots, confirmation of what I believe to be true based on my family's shared history, what they've shared with me, what I know about the region, but still quite interesting and fascinating too. Obviously, there's a lot more information. They give me traits like hair color and eye color and things like that. I'm gonna play around with it some more to see what I find in there, but yeah, I just find it all, there's no other way for me to say it. I find it all super fascinating. I find it all very special to know a little bit more about where you come from and your history and what your family, your ancestors lived through. It just makes it a little more real. I don't know how else to say it. But let me know if you've done this. Let me know if you're considering it. Again, I will link to 23andMe down below. Through my Ancestry account, I have a link that I can share with people so that you can get a discount if and when you want to purchase either just the Ancestry or the Ancestry and Health Report. I will also link to my original 23andMe video where I get my reports back. I did both the Ancestry and Health, which again, fascinating, and I found to be very accurate. A lot of the information that I gave me was super accurate to what I know about my personal health. So if you want to watch that, if you want to check out the website, again, all of that information is in the description box below. Click or tap right here to watch my last video, or click down below to watch another video that you might enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned.